Bendy in the Dark Revival. Whew. What a game! I literally thought it would never see the light of day. But here we are. One entire year of Bendy and the Ink Machine's sequel. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the revival of the Bendy series 1 year after its release.
As a Bendy fan practically since day one, to see this franchise take a new turn was an experience that I fell in love with. Shortly after Bendy and the Ink Machine's final release, along with the addition of the 5th and final chapter to the game, Bendy and the Dark Revival was announced as the second main title of the series in April of 2019. Fans such as myself were so excited to know that we would be entering back into this old decrepit studio for another ink-stained nightmare. The visuals presented in the title reveal had already topped our expectations of what this new adventure would have in stock. 2 months later in June, Joey Drew Studios had given us our first look into the Dark Revival with a gameplay trailer that piqued everybody's complete interest, sparking theories left and right of what will be present in this new title. It was a great time for the Bendy community, as it kept us constantly thinking about what to expect, as well as some new merch to promote the game's release, and posts from the developers revealing the different environments and of course our protagonist, Audrey. Fast forward a year, we've been left with less updates and announcements since December 2019, where Dark Revival was announced to not follow its predecessor's development pattern, with the game coming out as a final version with a total of 5 chapters instead of having different releases each year. Then out of nowhere, we received a new game on Steam, Boris and the Dark Survival. At the time of its release on Steam in 2020, Boris and the Dark Survival was literally $1.
I'm not joking, seriously.
It was a fun spin-off game to Ink Machine, as it also sort of introduced us to the style that we would later see in Dark Revival. Unfortunately, no changes other than slight texture differences were made to the characters to match the environment. Aside from that, this game also caused a bit of tension in the Bendy community. Some people thought it was a great experience to survive as Boris in the cycle, while others thought it was just boring, and that Joey Drew Studios wasn't taking Dark Revival's production all that seriously. Fast forward again to 2022, where the devs had practically been radio silent ever since the 4th Bendyversary. At this point, people had begun to lose hope in Bendy and the Dark Revival, as the series started to sadly fade off the internet. With newer indie titles coming out, hearing people talk about Bendy in the slightest was a rarity, as more people became less familiar with it or even forgot about it completely. The only Bendy we had at this point was the novels, which were all very fun and interesting to read. But quite literally in a rushing surprise, they immediately announced the new Dark Revival trailer coming out on November 1st, 2022, making any remaining Bendy fans have a double take. There are not words on this planet to describe the amount of pure excitement that was going through my mind as I watched the final Dark Revival trailer. And believe me, there was an overwhelming amount of information to process in the 2 minutes this trailer had to offer for us. This said information also included the release date for the Dark Revival itself, November 15th, 2022, which meant the 2-week wait was on.
This was literally the longest 2 weeks of my entire life. It felt like forever until it was over.
Needless to say, Bendy and the Dark Revival is beyond an upgrade from Bendy and the Ink Machine. Not only are the visuals and addition of realism the most stunning, but the ability to make an entirely different style of game while capturing the tone of its predecessor is very impressive. Another thing that Dark Revival builds up on is a story development and overall sense of direction that delivers the player to a satisfying conclusion once reached. The game doesn't just end off with sending you back to the abysmal hell you just went through, making you feel like your actions meant nothing in what felt like the end. No, Dark Revival makes you feel like you finally accomplished what you started in the first game. A sense of wholeness swarms you in what felt like was the true battle of a lifetime, knowing you've set those who've suffered free from the dark eternal grasp of the Ink Demon.
Now that I say it like that, it almost reminds me of Undertale's pacifist ending in a way.
Not to say that the ending to Bendy and the Ink Machine was in any way disappointing, I just feel now it could have been more clear and or explained better, if you get what I mean. But, the past is the past. Besides the story, Dark Revival grants the player an overall more interesting, fun, and even more genuinely terrifying experience with the new implemented game mechanics. Suffice to say, Bendy and the Ink Machine rarely had any major panic-inducing events to keep the player on their toes, other than the occasional unannounced appearances of the Ink Demon during Chapter 3 in the game. Interestingly enough, Dark Revival actually recycles this same concept for the Ink Demon. The main difference being that chances of survival were very low if you didn't manage to hide successfully, not only giving you an almost satisfying array of how the Ink Demon decides your demise. This choice for the Ink Demon's attacks is absolutely perfect to show how his evolution has caused him to become an even greater threat than before, which is accompanied with a soundtrack that will always have players panic to hide the moment it hits their eardrums. Another character that implements the same anxiety is the Slicer, the newest member of the Butcher Gang. It makes me uncomfortable to even begin to mention this pure embodiment of fear, as she literally stalks you throughout the entire studio if you dare make the executive decision of freeing her from her delivery crate.
I don't know why, but I find it unironically hilarious that she comes in a delivery crate when you free her. I mean, it's like kind of like an unboxing gone wrong, in a way.
Oh, and let's also not forget about that ear-piercing scream. While still on the topic of mechanics, I also wanted to cover the player's newly given abilities. Throughout Audrey's journey, she finds herself within the Dark Puddles and is gifted with several abilities, all allowing her to ease a bit of the struggle she faces throughout the cycle. Banish, Flow, and Fast Travel are all the abilities she is able to obtain and upgrade, with Banish contributing to the addition of Stealth, allowing Audrey to sneak up on any unaware enemy and quite literally Thanos snap them.
In this case, I think it'd be a Thanos grab, but whatever.
Flow, a short teleport move that is quite handy for getting out of trouble and into areas that might be hard to reach. Thanks to this lost one, Porter, we are able to use his ability throughout the studio to our benefit in escaping the grasp of the darkness.
Goodbye, Bobby! Try not to die!
Lastly, there is the Fast Travel ability. As useful as it is, it's of course unlocked practically near the end of the story. Interestingly enough, we received this ability yet again from another lost one, Heidi, in which we first had to play a classic game of hide and seek in order for her to give us this useful ability.
As backtracking in this game is the biggest pain known to man.
This ability is used by finding these ink pool things called linkers,
I honestly don't know what the original purpose was, but who cares.
which are spread throughout the studio and act as two-way portals to earlier or later locations in the game. The final addition to Dark Revival that made it different from Ink Machine is being able to upgrade your weapon's capabilities for battle and puzzle solving. In Bendy in the Dark Revival, Audrey finds herself a gent pipe lodged within the corpse of a lost one, where she is now able to defend herself from the horrors the studio throws in her way. This pipe is different from the one Henry previously used, as Audrey can make different upgrades and augmentations with the right parts and schematics collected. These gent upgrades range from giving your pipe the ability to electrically charge and open gent-powered doors, to being able to stun some of the studio's most threatening enemies, which proves to be quite useful in the long run. Of course, this list of things weren't present in Bendy and the Ink Machine, with Henry only being Henry and our limit to the rather simple weapons we found throughout the studio.
And the singing tool wasn't introduced until Chapter 5, so no new tools or items were added into the game. But sometimes I wish we could get the singing tool back in Dark Revival.
Okay. Although this may not be considered a feature or a mechanic, it's amazing enough that it might as well be one. You can literally turn Bendy's head into a freaking helicopter. This is beyond any gaming experience that I have ever indulged in, and I am so glad to be alive so I can experience this. If you ever do decide to try and hurt your devilish little companion with that nasty pipe of yours, it will result in a shockingly amusing surprise to both the player and probably Bendy himself. Other than Bendy's art style, the characters presented within the series are a whole other thing that makes the series so iconic. Bendy, while being the face of the franchise, actually wasn't all too focused on in the original Bendy the Ink Machine game. He was instead substituted by the infamous main antagonist of the series, the Ink Demon, a sort of monster version of the cute cartoon character. But Dark Revival changed us all, giving the community exactly what they always wanted: a real cycle incarnation of Bendy. The merch I mentioned earlier showcased a concept of an actual living Bendy that we'd be receiving, but the trailer instead showed us the Bendy we deserved. This absolutely adorable little abomination broke the internet in a matter of seconds, and the fans fell in love with him instantly. I mean, look at him, he's freaking irresistible! That little suit of his, along with those little hands and bow ties, is all too much to handle. And don't even get me started on that little toy train of his, is so, Switching the topic up, let's move over to a new star of the show, Audrey. We're introduced to this young Archgate animator with very little knowledge about her other than she's working overtime and is in a dire need for coffee. Where the story first differentiates from Ink Machine is how, unlike Henry, Audrey was forcefully dragged into the cycle by Wilson instead of being quote-unquote invited back. Henry steps foot first into the cycle thinking nothing of it. Meanwhile, Audrey wakes up bewildered by her dark, sepia-toned surroundings, immediately putting two and two together to figure out that she isn't in a dream, but a dark new reality she'll have to face. Audrey has to be one of the most unique characters in all of Bendy due to the amount of crap that she's been shoved into. Finding out that she has direct connections to Joey Drew, the man behind the cycle and her creation, as well as the Ink Demon, a heartless monstrosity who is technically a sibling of hers. Speaking of the Ink Demon, the inky monster version of Bendy we once knew in Bendy and the Ink Machine has now fully embodied the demon in his name, thanks to his time of evolution in Dark Revival. As I mentioned before, he's become more of a relentless hunter, now seeing that he can better process information and now even share his dark thoughts with Audrey, sending chills down our back with his deep, mouthwash gargle-like voice. With the many antagonists presented to us in the Dark Revival, Wilson is quite an interesting character to touch on. The thing I find most fascinating about Wilson is how he has us constantly switching our opinions about him, thinking he's obviously bad for essentially sending Audrey to hell, while considering the fact that his hidden good deeds might be misunderstood. Similar to Audrey, he's another character we don't get any primary information on, meaning that we are the judge of his character until his true motives and backstory are revealed to us, where we can then determine his position in the story. The final antagonist I'd also want to not forget is the self-appointed queen of the studio herself, Alice Angel. I feel Alice was probably the antagonist in Bendy and the Ink Machine who got a bit more hate than deserved, though I know where some of it comes from. Alice had a lot of greatly written past events as Susie Campbell that would later explain how she became the demented angel we see in the game, but unfortunately her execution in the end didn't quite satisfy most. I now realize that Wilson and Alice from Ink Machine share a similar keep your distance type of antagonist when they're both protected by a wall of glass or a PA speaker. Only once they leave their hidey hole to confront you, they are completely vulnerable and incapable of really doing anything to you, usually meeting their demise in the process. Dark Revival ends up changing Alice in a simple but effective way. We still know her personality and how she likes to toy with her victims, but once one wrong switch is slipped in her plans, she takes matters into her own hands in quite a drastic way. A battle of blazing metal. Making Alice a boss fight in Dark Revival was a very unexpected turn of events, as we wouldn't expect her to go to such measures as to fill us with lead, let alone kill us directly. Though a short boss battle, it was quite fun to have to dodge Alice's surging shots as we slowly progress our way up to her high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the heart.
When we try and sneak up on Alice and attempt to shamefully touch her, we're then held at gunpoint for like a second before Audrey just pulls this off out of nowhere. I'm not gonna lie, on my first playthrough I found this cutscene unironically hilarious until I heard the sweet as Alice is once again impaled to the chest from Allison. Not laughing wasn't an option at this point. On a serious note, I also like how Alice is given a more proper and emotional death instead of just... as she is now first seen interacting with Allison, who is revealed to be the only person who cared to save Susie from herself. Since I was running short on time and ideas, I would like to sorta kinda conclude this video with all the community content and growth since Bendy and the Dark Revival's release. This title was indeed, without a doubt, Bendy's True Revival. So much new people have joined this community, and I am more than glad to welcome them with open arms, as well as harass them about the things they don't know. Without wasting time, let's get into the new memes and animations this community has blessed us with.
Whoa, I thought you were dead.
This short and chaotic SFM animation was incredibly hilarious due to how accurate it was. It's actually kind of funny how Security Breach came out a little after a year before Dark Revival. It's almost coincidental, really.
I also like how Dark Revival took the opposite approach that Security Breach did, by actually aiming for a more intense and terrifying experience instead of toning it down a bit.
Hurling down thy majesty, I beg of thee, have mercy on me. I was just a boy, you see, I plead of thee, have sympathy for me. See how the surf with the ground, and they give it all they've got, and they give it all they've got.
I found this channel earlier in the year and I have a great appreciation for this dude's art style. This guy did the impossible and drew Henry Stein accurately in his own style, which Henry is arguably the hardest character to get right when drawing him. This animation is also how I found my new brain electrifying song, The Mind Electric by Miracle Musical.
Hey, Raiden Shogun, is that you? Well, guess what? You're not the boss of me. That's right, you heard me. Go ahead!
Funny enough is when this animation had come out, I had just finished watching Chainsaw Man and I thought this was the perfect collaboration. Minus that, this was an excellent animation.
It's really cute that you're gonna defeat me with the power of friendship and all, but again, I am the devil from the Bible, so I don't know how
You
well
mother you didn't let me finish.
Go ahead.
I have all this power in my hands.
Shut up. I'm the I don't care. I do not care.
This was the funniest and most accurate Bendy animation of the year. It was also like the first time someone used Henry's official model in an SFM, so it took some time to get used to. This animation was just purely to make my day better. Like, this was made to make everybody's day better, and that's its sole purpose, is just to be the best Bendy meme in the entire community. I think this animation is just purely wholesome. And besides that, I also think it's really cool to show like how Bendy could help Audrey in the real world now that he's actually in the real world. I actually find that like a really cool detail about the entire thing. And last but definitely not least, the fact that this just exists is hilarious. I mean, I thought I would never see the day where the entire Bendy community will get rickrolled by the Ink Demon himself. That is something to live for. For all of you who are still watching at this point, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. This means everything to me. This is the first time I've used a script in a video, so it was fun to write, and also, if you like this, I might even make a video about all the bloopers, so stay tuned, because trust me, there's a lot of them. With all that being said, it's been a fun year, Bendy fans, and now, the wait for the cage begins.